Hey everyone, it's Erik from Erik Soriano Studio. Welcome to another lesson. Last time we looked into what reusable components were in Figma and how powerful they are, right? We created a series of shapes and an image container that we were able to replicate and apply the same change across an unlimited number of instances for it. Today we're going to be looking at creating an app layout, and this is something that I personally like to work with whenever I am working either alone or as part of a team, and specifically because part of my job involves teaching people how to use software like Figma and how to scale myself up across different products. And so I usually start with a template with a layout that includes the header, the footer, the navigation, and where the main content is, just to have an idea of where to put my content on the screen and how to design my experiences like that. So for that, we can start from scratch. For this demo, I'm going to create or grab a frame, and there's different sizes that Figma gives you. If you notice on the design panel, let me just grab this again. You can, when you click on the frame option, you already have some presets here of different screen sizes, depending on what you're designing, and then where the interface is going to live. I like to use the desktop ones, specifically this one, right? So as you can see here, you can do it in Figma. Particularly, you can do it either from scratch, right? You put in the design panel like what the width and the height is going to be for that. 1024, I like to work like this. I'm gonna add a stroke just so we can see it. But you also saw how I was able to easily just grab it from one of the presets they have, and I'm just gonna do it once again. I'm gonna grab the desktop one. Now I have two, right? So you saw how easily Figma kind of makes that easy for you to get started. And so I'm gonna work with the one they give me already. And if you think of a traditional web layout, I know we're not gonna cover mobile right now, but maybe in a different video. If you look at a traditional web application or website, the components you normally have are a navigation bar, and I'm just gonna, let me reduce the size of this. A navigation bar that normally sits at the top. I like to work with mine approximately 56 pixels high, and this is an arbitrary number, right? The actual size you select will depend on what you're working on. And I'm gonna make this a little smaller as well. Let's see, fixed it. And the width, because we're gonna be working with a flexible, resizable screen, I'm not going to put a width, but let's go with just flexible, right? By default, because again I'm using a preset, it's gonna be around 1440. I think that's the size, the standard size. And so the traditional skeleton or layout of an application page, right? It starts with the navigation at the top. You have this is where you have the search bar, like the login information, the logo of the app. You also sometimes have a site navigation, which is where all the main content of your website is going to be accessible from. The height and the width of this, again, for the purpose of this demo, I'm gonna choose 1024, which is the height of that we already have. And then the width will be, I like to work with maximum 300 pixels. I don't like those large navigations. The next is the header or heading area. This is where the page title is and where the breadcrumbs, which are used for navigation. The height normally I work with is 250 to 300 pixels, depending on what I need. The width again is flexible, and I'm just gonna start adding markers shortly. Then you move on to the main content, right, of the page. This is where you start putting all your tables or your containers, your photos, the grid, whatever you're working on. This is where it goes. The height, like I said, it's gonna depend on where your heading ends. Let's say in this case, because we had 1024 height, if you subtract the 250 from that amount, whatever the difference is going to be our height. And so we're gonna make it flexible. And the width, same principle. And of course, the end, we're gonna have the footer. The footer, normally I like to work with also 56 pixels high. The width can be flexible. And what I'm gonna do now is I like to also let's grab a rectangle, and let's start with the top, right? The top navigation. Let's make it 56 pixels just like I said, and I'm gonna set it to the back. And you notice when I'm in the layers panel where I'm able to see the items that are from top to bottom, that's the same order they're going to be displayed on the middle of the canvas. In other words, the rectangle we just made that I'm gonna call, let me rename it, global nav bar, just for simplicity. If I move it to the top, now it's gonna sit above everything else, right? If I move it below, all the way below, then now it's behind the actual frame, which we don't want that. So you want to make sure if you're gonna click on the item and grab it, you want to make sure that it sits inside the frame. And the frame indicator is this little the section indicator is these two little squares here. And so let me go ahead and just bring it back here. I will be making this got it, this is what I was trying to do. Now, so the gray area, I'm gonna color code it gray for now. It can be any other color for 40, and I'm going to right click and make it a frame, and I'm gonna tell you why I made it a frame. So when you frame something, you're able to then use auto layout, and we've covered auto layout before, which allows you to resize things, you know, at the children or at the parent level. You dictate height and width, and then all the items nested inside of it inherit that same height and width. So let me make this an auto layout. And again, if you remember from our previous lesson, this itself is a layout, but it's nested as a child of the desktop item. Let's just rename this up layout parent or grandparent. Now the gray navigation bar, the horizontal one, I'm gonna name it parent nav bar. That one, we want to make sure it's actually we want it to be fill. So first things first, let me make the frame, the whole app layout frame that houses everything inside it. We're gonna make it an auto layout. And a couple of things just happened. So first, we want to make sure that this one is the first item at the top. And now I'm gonna make it fill container. And if you remember from previous lessons, now because it's filling whatever space it has available, if I make this wider, it should automatically align and fill accordingly, right? That's what fill is. Now the next part we want to work on is going to be the side navigation. So I'm gonna just, while selecting on the gray container we have at the top, I'm just gonna make another one. And then this time I'm gonna manipulate the height to fill. The width, I'm going to manipulate it to fixed, and I'm gonna set it to 250. Let's just try that. Right, so that should be working, but it's not working. Let me just look into it right now. Right, so we want to make sure that this is, let's take it out for now. I'm gonna try to put it back in there, but something's off. So sometimes Figma will do this, and it will break the layout, because auto layout is really powerful, but also if you don't know how to do it right, it can mess up what you're doing. So let me take out this text for now, right? And I'll show you what I just want to show you the app layout once again. Now we already have the top navigation, right? So what I want to do now is I want to duplicate it. I'm going to, oh, the spacing, this is the problem, right? So in auto layout, the padding, the spacing between these two objects was 311, and we don't want that. We're gonna make it 0 for now. Now what happens is, let's go back to making this a fill container, which is gonna be the site navigation. We wanna reduce it to 250, right? And because right now everything is centered, we want to justify it, align it left, because this should always be left. And I'm gonna change the color to a little lighter gray, but just just slightly lighter to make a differentiate from the top one. And now we have these two options. Now I'm gonna copy and paste yet again, but this time, because this is gonna be the header, I'm going to create the auto layout once again for the side menu and for the content area. I'm gonna auto layout, and I'm going to select wrap because I want them to, I can select either horizontal or wrap. I want them to align horizontally, not vertically, right? So if I do this and I change the color of this to red, let's say, now I'm going to select the second auto layout. Remember, going back, grandparent is the whole app layout template. This is the first children, which is the parent. Again, it's gonna be parent to something else, but it's a child of grandparents for now. So this one sits aligned at the top. Then we have the next group, which is the site navigation. This is child number 2, and this is gonna be child number 3, right? Or parent. I'm gonna name main content. This is gonna be site menu. Now, because I want them both in a group, so then I can click fill container, and now this one, the main container, is gonna fill up most of the remaining space. Because remember, we don't wanna have a side menu that is this big, because navigations on the side don't really work that way. And this would, imagine if you were collapsing a template, a page, right? So if it's closed, it would be like this. If it's open, like this. And I'm using the number 250 to 300 because that's kind of approximately, based on my experience, what looks the best. That should accommodate 3 or 4 words, with a 16-point pixel font size. Now the next part is we have the side menu and content areas. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to make a copy of the main, right? And selecting the original main content, the red one, plus its copy. Now we make yet another auto layout, and this one is going to be vertical aligned, and this is going to be for that header part before the actual content. You can kind of see how I'm manipulating the auto layouts to accomplish that template that I'm looking for. This is a column of 2 items stacked about each other, right? So as we talked about earlier, the header area, we want it to be approximately 150 or 100. Like, this is the area again where the breadcrumbs and the page title are gonna be, and maybe any action buttons if you have the need for that. So I'm gonna select to 150, or actually let's make it 200. It doesn't look that big. Now this is going to, I'm gonna rename this one the header area. So we're gonna have header plus main, and last but not least, we want to have the footer. So let's make a copy of the smaller one again, the header, and we're gonna move it to the bottom. And as we mentioned before, footer, we want it to be 56 perhaps, and I'll change the color to a little darker. Footers are normally darker. So now we have these 3 items, right? We have our top navigation, we have our side navigation that opens and closes, we have the header area, we have the main area, and we have the footer. Now I like to also have some space between the side navigation and the main content areas. So what I'll do here is selecting the header and the main, just make yet another auto layout. You guys know I love my auto layout. And then adding some space horizontal padding. I usually like to work in an even number, so 32 is a good number. Basically, or you can even try it bigger, right? What this does is, and again, remember, if this is open, you don't you want the content, let's say the breadcrumbs page title, to start somewhere here aligned, but you do want some white space between both, because otherwise it will look really weird if you have like the navigation item ending and then immediately you have no white space in between. You want the design to breathe, and so this is why I like to add that extra space there. It looks wide like that, but again, we can even customize this even further. I can even make two more of these, duplicate them, make them smaller, let's say 32. Change the color to, I don't know, green or yellow, something like a really nice light yellow. And then I can copy it and put it inside this too. Let's see if it works. There you go. No, it's not working, but I'm gonna reduce the space, and yeah, something's happening, not sure what. Sorry about that. Let me click fill, and I want this to be between. There you go. Yeah, I'm over here breaking my own layout. I apologize for that, but let me see if I can fix it real quick. Maybe make another auto layout again. Wrap it. There you go. This is what I was looking for. And now, don't worry, I'm gonna explain to you what I just did and what it means. Again, you can even add the padding over here in the design panel, like I had it. Right now there's 0 because again I just added the shapes instead. I like to manipulate things better. But if you wanted to add it just a spacing and push the items toward the middle, that's fine too. You can also do the padding vertically. Although for that I normally tend to have smaller numbers. Let's say I add 16. I normally use 16 padding vertical between the breadcrumbs area at the top and the footer and the content. And then 32 for the left and right sides. Now, having said that, we now have a basic layout. What I want to do next is start grabbing all the little annotations I did earlier, and I'm gonna put this in the top. Put it inside the main parent global navigation, because I want it to be like sit right in the middle, although I don't know why it's not working. Let me see if maybe this one does it. It's not working. So hopefully this gives you an idea of how to start a layout. Let me see if you notice I'm resizing, and this is why I wanted to, okay, no, it should be resizing from both sides. This is why I want to use auto layout, and I love it so much, because now if I make auto layout of this too, now I'll make it fill. And I just make sure that I have everything filled. That way I can manipulate this layout and use it. Let's say if I want to make a wireframe that is like horizontally really long in a large screen, if I want to make it, simulate a long scrollable page, this is how I would do it, right? So you have created the layout for all, to be used across different screen sizes, and it can really help you know where to put items and how to make sure that your design looks the same across different screens. But I want to do something before we end the lesson today. I want to have this like this, and I'm going to frame it like this. No, not the auto layout. Okay, this is what I was trying to do. Frame it. Now I added this. Perfect. And I'm gonna make it smaller. So this is, again, I want to do this to, I usually do this to remind myself for if I'm sharing this with somebody else that's not a designer, like a product manager, make it easier for them so they don't have to worry about the spacing and the pixel sizes. I did it for them, and I can either color code it or they can just do it with, you know, all white and gray, but have some outlines. You know, because I'm not expecting them to be as design savvy as me, or, you know, as savvy with the software as I am. And so if I want to make a little annotation inside this one, I can also do the same thing. This is the side menu that we talked about. The high can be, let's see, we're using, okay, let me actually work with 1080. Let me just increase the, right, so 1024. And if you notice the sum, if we use 1080 as the entire height for the wireframe, this is like a standard desktop one. 56 plus 1024 equals 1080, right? So this is how you know your numbers. It's important to know your numbers when you're designing, especially because spacing really helps the design, you know, user guide through the design easier. You don't want to have a lot of information crammed. You know, you want to have white space because it's really important to have some breathing. Let me see, I'm gonna, now for the next one, and how I'm able to accomplish putting like a text in the middle is, so right now, if you remember, I created containers that are basic shapes. I first have to frame them, and when you frame something, this allows you to, you see a little hashtag sign, this allows you to drag and drop items, and you know, you're able to position the items inside. You are able to align them according to, in proportion to the parent of it, right? And this is kind of what I wanted to do earlier, and so I'm glad that I'm able to do it now. Make sure this one's centered. It's a recenter. Now I want to do that same thing, but for the main content. So I'm gonna have to frame the main content again, drop this baby here, and rename it main content. Hide, we talked about that. Again, this sum should be 1024 if you're working on a standard layout like I am, but ideally, of course, the bigger it gets, you know, the more look, and I'm gonna put a constraint so we know that the maximum number should be 200. This one should have a constraint, honestly, and so I'm gonna have to frame it as well because it's not, there you go, that's what I wanted. And so height can be flexible. Height width, oh, we want it to be, okay, so 1073, I guess, because if this is 32, yeah, you want to make it, you can always pay attention to the design panel. It also helps you a lot to plan out your spacing in X and Y axis and width and height. So 1073, the width, height, we just went over that. That can be flexible based on what you need, right? The here, let's just replace this header. Height can be maximum 200. The width can be I guess the width can be also 1073. Now let's do the same for the padding. Remember, we have to frame it because right now it's just a regular container. We frame it, we drop the text in the middle of it, and then we just rename it. The width 1073, we already know that. Height shouldn't be bigger than 56 unless you need like a really big footer area, which I rarely work with those, but you know, just know that whatever, if you make this bigger, it's gonna, you know, just obviously make this the height for the other two items above it smaller. The last but not least, we want to have a little annotation for the yellow paddings. Let me frame them first, drop in the text, and then I'm gonna rotate it negative 90 degrees, or actually just 90 degrees is fine. And so they can realign really nicely. I'm gonna reduce the text to maybe 12. Padding height, I think it's 1024 if I'm not mistaken, right? No, actually no. Here you go. I'm gonna say flexible for this as well, like flexible. And the width, obviously 32. You really don't want to have more space than that. I mean, you can just, it shouldn't be less than 32 because at that point it's like non-existent, right? So I'm just gonna make this easier for myself and copy this one already since we have it, and then get rid of the previous one. And then this gives you that app layout, your own app layout. Oh, let's fix it a little bit more. Yeah, the reason why this keeps happening, guys, is because if you notice, every time I create an auto layout, you have to set it to fill, because if it's fixed, it will never, like, you'll never obey and try to fill the space because it doesn't feel like it needs to. App layout. So let's see, we're gonna do this here. For some reason it's not working. It's okay, we can just redo it. We can make it 200, and we can just get rid of it. I can rename this, like recolor it. Perfect. Perfect. Now let's see if we have a, there you go. Almost there, guys, almost there. I'm not sure what's going on, but let me see if I can just group and frame and auto layout. I think it should work now. No, it's not working. Yeah, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy one of the ones that already works. Let me see, maybe one of these. I'm just gonna drop it here, make it 56. That's gonna be our new top navigation since this one seems to work fine. I'm gonna copy and paste the text we already had. I'm going to delete the gray one. This is gonna be the new one, darker. And I'll do the same for the footer. Just gonna copy the text that already is working. Let me see if I can just do this. Yeah, something's really weird happening here. I'm not sure what's going on. But something really weird is happening. Well, thank you so much for watching this video, guys. Apologize for I couldn't get it working, but hopefully this gives you an idea of how to start your own app layout and how you can work when on something like this to help you plan out your layouts for your designs. In the next video, we'll go a little bit more in detail into how we can use one of these to flesh out a wireframe. We'll go through some wireframes ourselves. If you enjoy this type of content, please leave a like, share, subscribe, and check out my other videos. Thank you so much. Bye.